Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're taking a look at a knife that is pretty cool and pretty hotly requested, highly requested is maybe the way I should have said that. This is the Civivi Elementum, and it's in the 9CR Damascus. Now, I'd had a number of requests to review the Elementum. Some of you kind of even went so far as to say, you know, this might be the small knife that converts you to being a big, small knife guy. I'm still, you know, it hasn't really converted me in that sense. I still like 3.5 inches on the blade, but I have to say that, you know, this knife and one other, which would be the Steel Wheel Tasso Mini, stand out to me as probably my favorite small knives that I've ever reviewed. And I've reviewed quite a number. I purposely do try to get some small knives here just because I know some of you viewing do like the smaller stuff. So this is definitely one of those. The other thing that was highly requested, and it wasn't specifically this model, but I had a number of you asking about the Civivi Damascus models and what I thought of them and if I liked them. And so, you know, this was an opportunity to get my hands on one of those and, you know, kind of see how it compares and see how they've done here. So this kind of crosses off both of those check boxes. And so let's go ahead and get into this, beginning with size and weight, the way we always do. This guy is 7 inches overall. Okay, 3 inches on the blade, 4 inches on the handle. I guess you could have figured that out for yourself. 3.25 inches of grip area, so not a massive amount of grip area there, and 2.8 ounces, so quite lightweight. In terms of how this goes in pocket, it's really, really unobtrusive. You really don't even know you've got this with you. So from that sort of part of the consideration, you know, how easy is this to carry? Yeah, it's fantastic. You really don't even know you have a knife with you, and so there's definitely that benefit to it. Moving over to the blade here, let's get the blade discussion going first, the way we normally do. So this is 9CR Damascus, which is the one that Civivi's using in most of their stuff, and I think it's the Damascus you're going to see in a number of the Chinese folders that are doing Damascus. Here's what I've got to say about this. In this particular blade, I really like it. It's cool, it's interesting. I like the swirling pattern that they've achieved here. So this particular version I really like. My issue with this is I've looked at a lot of videos and pictures of the Civivi Damascus offerings in their other models, and I haven't seen any I like as much as this. Okay, so if you're going to, I don't know, let's say you're buying a Backlash or an Aquila or any number of they've got a couple of new knives coming out with Damascus. What I would say is either one, try to get into a store where you can actually get it in hand and take a look, or two, request some pictures. I know you retailers are going to be hating me right now, especially Justin over at White Mountain Knives. That's where I got this, by the way. And if you want one, go over there. You can use my discount code SHARPSTUFF. But yeah, if you're going to buy one of these, I would want to take a look at the blade I'm buying, or at least look at a number of versions of the model that I'm going to get. So, you know, let's say I'm going to buy a Backlash. Well, I would spend some time online looking at as many Civivi Backlashes as I can to see what I think of the steel. They tend to be similar. So I looked at a bunch of Elementums before buying this, and they all sort of had this swirly round pattern that I liked. I've looked at a number of other models and I didn't find that to be the case. Some of the Damascus on the blade just looked a little busy and not highly attractive. So that's my overall take. The other thing I've got to say here is you are paying more for these. So these I think are around $80. I could be wrong, but I think these guys are around $80, and you're paying that extra just really for looks. You're not getting good performance out of this steel. I mean, it's not a bad steel. 9CR 18 MOV is a good steel, especially from the budget side of things, but it's not this earth-shattering, like just amazing thing. Okay, so if you're really only after performance, you're probably better off to pay less and go with the D2 version. Okay, just understand that the extra money you're spending is really just giving you looks. Now, that's another thing that I want to talk about here. For me, a blade like this recategorizes this knife almost immediately. So really, I would say, hey, the Elementum would be a really nice EDC knife. You know, they're not too expensive. They're ground nicely. They're an easy knife to carry and use. And so for all those reasons, great EDC knife. However, when you get a blade finish like this, that's as attractive as this one is, that makes me not want to go and cut a bunch of cardboard with this or do anything with it that I could scrape up this finish. Because you scrape up this finish, it's not like you're just going to easily sand it out the way you would with a satin finish blade. You've really kind of messed it up. Okay, now thankfully it's not too expensive, so maybe if you mess it up, you're not that concerned. But that to me is a big consideration. So this to me is a gentleman's knife largely because of the blade. Okay, now let's come back, having gone through the Damascus side of this discussion, let's now address just the general use of this blade. And I have to say, this is a nice blade. It's attractive. The hollow grind means it's super thin behind the edge. So if you like cutting stuff with your knife, as long as the stuff that you're cutting is not too crazy big, because there's less than 3 inches of cutting edge here, okay, you are going to love this performance. Okay, so in terms of how this blade actually works in regular cutting tasks, just as an average everyday EDC knife, it's really, really nice. Okay, so this blade, I think in the non-Damascus version, it's very attractive. It's nicely finished. It's very, very good in terms of a performer. All right, so that's what I would say about this blade. And so we sort of had to break that down into two halves there. So we talked about the Damascus, and then we talked about the blade just from a general sense, if this wasn't this particular version. All right, let's move on now. I hope that gives you enough to go by, that you have an understanding of how this blade is going to perform and my thoughts on the Civivi on the Damascus in general. The next thing to talk about is going to be lockup and deployment. And there's not a lot to say here, guys. This is a Civivi, so the detent is pretty nice. The action is pretty smooth. It's nice and drop shut. Now, once you can see here, let's try and show you. So if I release the lock bar, you see it drops pretty nicely. All right, but when you take the lock bar off and you let that spring tension push on the blade, then it doesn't drop quite as freely. All right, still very enjoyable. And if you wanted to lubricate that, you could lubricate the detent path and get a little better performance out of it. I have not done that with this knife up to this point. Something I'll probably do in the future. The other part here that I normally talk about is sort of the ergonomics of this blade. How comfortable is it when you're opening it and closing it? If you're going to sit on the couch and fidget with it, is that going to be something you can do with this knife? And I have to say, yes, this is a knife where the lock bar is easy to access. The flipper tab, although small, is quite grippy. So I never, even look how small it is, and never once did I have to think about or worry about slipping off this flipper tab. So I think they've done a really nice job. It is on bearings, and we've had the bearing discussion before. It's not that I dislike bearings for EDC knives, but I always think they add a little extra element. So maybe you've been around someone who offers this comment about cars. You know, you get in a car and it has every single bell and whistle imaginable, and they'll say, well, that's just one more thing to go wrong. I still like bells and whistles on cars. I still look for some nice features on my cars, but I am kind of aware of that in the back of my mind. And I feel sort of the same way about bearings. I like bearings. I enjoy the action that they provide, but I sometimes feel like, okay, there's potentially one more thing to go wrong, or one extra bit of maintenance that I have to do. And that's really all that happens. Is with bearings, you're going to have a little bit of extra maintenance. You're going to have to pay attention to how and when you're using your knife, where with something with washers, you wouldn't have to worry about that so much. All right, and I should be saying ball bearings. I know that some engineering type is going to correct me down in the comments. That's fine. I think you guys know what I mean. In terms of action, lockup, deployment, all of that good stuff, I really enjoy this. Everything is easily accessible. It's fast. It's smooth, right? It's good. It's about what we've come to expect from Civivi. Okay, moving over now to the handle. Now the handle, I have to start by saying this is the carbon fiber laminate. So really this is just a carbon fiber sticker, you know, stuck onto G10. We've got a liner lock. It is milled out to save some weight. Single position pocket clip. That's really, really nicely done. Deep carry. The liners here being kind of proud of the scales it's okay, but I don't know if that's something I would have done. It's not the worst thing ever, and the knife is still very comfortable in hand, but perhaps I would have liked to see this done with, you know, where the scales, where this was flush out here rather than the liners being a little bit proud. It doesn't really affect anything. It just, to me, takes something away from the knife. By the way, let me add this point here. I'm not in love with the carbon fiber the way it's done here. And in general, I don't like the stuck-on carbon fiber. I prefer obviously the full stuff or G10. And I will say I did contact Civivi to find out, is it possible to get scales for this after the fact? And they said not at this time. Now, they didn't say that'll never be a thing, perhaps indicating that others have asked that same question before. If you're watching this and you're interested in that, touch base with them as well, because I think it's one of those things where if a number of people ask about it, perhaps they'll go, hey, maybe there's a market for that. But as it stands right now, if you want the Damascus blade, you're getting the carbon fiber. The only way around that would be to buy 2 knives and switch out the scales. And that's not something I'm interested in doing, and I doubt most others are going to do that either. All right. Now, getting back into the comfort on this, now that we've kind of covered the construction, this handle does feel really good, okay? So I've got to say, this gives me 4 fingers. The jimping on the back of the spine is really nice. It's grippy enough. Everything is really good. I do also, now I found myself doing this quite often. When I cut with this, there's enough space here, sort of on the flat portion here, that I can choke up on this knife. And I've done this a number of times. Really, I've also, the other grip I often use is sort of a pinch grip with my finger up here when I'm doing anything food related. And with all my knives, I have a tendency to come up here on the blade. But in terms of assessing the handle and the ergonomics, quite comfortable, and you can choke up. I wouldn't want to do this. Let's put it this way. If you're doing anything where you have that opportunity to be in a controlled environment where you can be careful, this is fine. Otherwise, I would stay back here. If I saw my 9-year-old son do this, I would tell him not to, okay? So I'm going to assume that all of you as my viewers are a little more safety conscious than my 9-year-old, and you're going to be fine with it. But just understand there's some risk of sliding up onto the blade if you do what I just showed you there in terms of choking up. So yeah, I do like the ergonomics on this. For a small knife especially, I find this feels really, really good in hand. Let's go ahead now that we've covered the handle and all the other aspects of the knife and do a couple comparisons. I'm going to warn you, I don't have fine motor skills, apparently. I don't have a lot of knives that are in this size range. This is the Backlash, and it's the White Mountain Knives, the Mass Drop exclusive. I like the Backlash an awful lot. As it compares to this, yeah, it's a little more in my size range. It's still pretty small, pretty lightweight. Both of these have a hollow grind, and I've got to say, Civivi has done a great job with the hollow grind. We already know from all the other Civivis I've looked at that they do a great job with getting a nice thin edge, and they always have pretty nice edge geometry. When you add a hollow grind to that, it just takes it up 10 notches. It makes it so slicey and so useful for cutting tasks that I absolutely love it. So this is a little more like what I enjoy. And I've got to say, both being Civivis, guess what? The action is pretty nice. And in terms of their price point, they're very well done. I don't have a lot of other small knives like this, so I'm just going to throw in some knives that I know you guys will be familiar with the size. So there it is beside the pair of 2. If I had a pair of 3, that would be a little more appropriate. We've got the Manix 2 lockback here. And the other knife I brought in really just for size comparison is the Inkosi. And the only reason I have those 3 knives, guys, is just because, of all the knives that I've got around right now, they're going to be the most familiar to people. So it will give you the best idea of where this stacks up in terms of overall size. I do, we could compare this to a bunch of other blades. Spyderco has lots of small blades, Mini Griptilian, Benchmade Mini Freak, Steel Wheel Tasso Mini. There's lots of smaller knives out there that are all pretty good. Most of them I find, and this being, 7 inches, some of those knives I mentioned are like 6.5 or something like that. I will say this, for a 7-inch knife, normally that's just a hard pass for me. I just have no interest in it. I just don't find them, hand filling and comfortable, and I always feel like I don't have enough knife with me. However, this is definitely a bit of an exception to that rule, okay? Now this one is definitely, a pretty clearly defined gentleman's folder, so I'm still not carrying this if I'm going out in the bush, or even if, as an EDC, it's more of something I'd carry to work, or if I'm going to an office meeting or something like that. this is the knife I would carry. For general EDC purposes, I like something a little bit bigger. That said, my overall thought, this is a really nice knife, okay? Great size, and I know many of you actually prefer this size. The design though, just the simplicity of this and the cleanness of it is where this really shines. This is a great design, beautiful, beautiful design, just simple and elegant and attractive. This is fantastic. Definitely one of the nicer designs that Civivi has come up with. I'm not going to bother saying I wish this was bigger because they actually have lots and lots of models that are bigger that I enjoy. And I just showed you one of them, the Backlash there a minute ago. So I think this is a great size. All around, I can easily recommend this knife. I like the 9CR Damascus. I like the feel in hand. I like the overall look of this. And in the D2 version, I think I would say exactly the same thing. All right, so there you go. That's my take on the Civivi Elementum. No wonder this knife made so many best of 2019 lists. It really, really is a good option and, you know, very affordable price. I hope you can find one. I didn't check before making this, but of course, go over to White Mountain Knives, use my discount code. You'll save yourself 10%. Hopefully they have them in stock. If not, you might have to wait or look elsewhere. Hopefully that's not the case. Again, guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to check the description for that link over to White Mountain Knives. We'll talk to you soon.